starting? We're starting. When do we start? We're starting. What? What? Damn you. Damn you.
You're back.
I'm back on the big screen.
Yeah. How's that feeling?
All right.
It's been a while.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. No, I like it and I want to direct more.
You said that this was a fun experience that kind of reinvigorated you as
It was reinvigorating, yeah. It was hard. It wasn't easy, but filmmaking's not easy.
No hurricanes, though.
There was one hurricane.
Oh, one.
Yeah. Well, there was one hurricane. You can see it in the film. It's the scene. There's a shot of the boy running up to Murray's house.
Oh.
It's at night. He's running up to the house, and it's that was the very beginning of a hurricane. And they told me I had to stop. And then a hurricane came through the night, and then the morning was gone. Everyone was scared because the area we were shooting had been devastated by a hurricane earlier last year, and then it was bright and sunny the next morning. Right after the hurricane, it cleared in almost 15 minutes, and it was bright and sunny, and I wanted to shoot, but the union in Montreal for the crew was saying you can't shoot because it's hurricane warning. So it's gone there, it's passed. And we weren't able to shoot until about 5 in the afternoon. So I lost a day because of a hurricane, which was unnecessary.
Yeah, but other than that, it was a smooth ride.
It was incredibly beautiful,
Yeah.
weather-wise.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very good weather. And it can be awful. Last year, apparently it rained 27 out of 30 days in September, so that's when I was shooting.
Yeah.
So we were lucky. That would have really changed the tone of the film. And it would have been hard to seduce someone to a town. It looked like it was always
It would
raining.
turn into like a bleak Lars von Trier-esque.
It's true. It's like, come here. Yeah.
It'll be your Dogville.
Yeah, exactly.
So what drew you to the project? I mean, it was already written.
Well, can I just ask you something
Yeah.
first? I thought there was going to be a beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought
Our wait staff
it was
is
gonna come with a beer.
overworked.
This is the worst service
Yeah.
I've ever seen. Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
What drew you to this project? I mean, it was already written.
Yeah, I had a project I was going to do, and then it sort of collapsed, and I just finished. What was I just finishing?
Michael?
Yeah. Michael Dowse. And we were going to do a second season, and then it collapsed. So I was ready, and he called me just sort of basically that day. I thought that the script was sort of rock solid. I couldn't really find fault with it, and that's so rare. I just felt this is so solid and it clearly works. And then he had Brendan and Roger I wanted to work with, and then he said that they've been talking about Brendan Gleeson. I thought, oh yes, well I really love Brendan Gleeson, so that would work for me. And I immediately could see the movie with Brendan.
Now, so you really enjoyed the script. Did you feel like that's Dowse, or like what was the writing process on that?
Well, I don't know how much I can talk about this. Do you actually have microphones here? Did you put a microphone on me or something? How does this work? Yeah, you put a microphone on me? I'm not paying attention.
Let's put it this way. What was it about?
No. Well, you know what happened, of course. It was. It's funny. I'm just figuring this out now. So the script was, the movie was, of course, a Quebecois film in French. Ken Scott wrote it. Then he hired Mike Dowse to translate it and do an English version. Roger Frappier is the guy who hired him. And he wrote that. And then he fired Mike Dowse because I think there was creative differences. I think Mike wanted to be looser with the script, and he really felt, and actually I agree that, and not that I sucked up to him, but I really feel it's a very mechanical script. You've got to sort of hit those beats. You can't, if it's going to work, it's got to hit those beats kind of. But I think he was afraid Mike wasn't going to, and he saw an early cut of Goon that scared the shit out of him, which as I understand it was just the violence. Reg Harkiman, the editor of that film, told me that cut was a sort of experimental cut where they took out all of the love story and all the romance and basically went for the violence. So he said it was very violent and scared him away. So there was that, and they didn't work out. So he hired Ken. They postponed it a year and talked to Ken. What's going on? That's me. What's happening? I'm looking at myself and hearing myself. So he hired Ken who had by that time directed Starbuck, to direct it, his own version, and Ken reinserted some elements and changed it back somewhat, which I found out that Mike didn't even know about, but he sort of reintroduced some of the elements that were in the original, so actually it was even more faithful to the original. And then Ken left Roger in the lurch to go direct this American version of Starbuck, and so then he hired me. So the script was done when I got it, and it was a mixture of Mike and Ken.
But people associate your voice with your writing, especially, I find.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're approaching a project where you're not having written
that's true. I rewrote it a tiny bit, but I believe that's not above the board. I mean, I did make some small changes. I did a pass. Yeah, that's true. Well, that was a challenge. I always thought that would be really fun to really test this auteur theory and try.
Finally, someone.
I mean, I've never really have directed anything by anyone else, and I really like the experience of writing something for someone else. I find it really interesting, which I've done, of course. But I never directed anyone written by someone else. So that actually really appealed to me. It's fun. As an actor, it's fun to do someone else's script, to say, well, what was he thinking when I did that, when he wrote that, and what does that mean? And when you wrote the script, it's hard to do that because you just think, well, I could change that. Anything problematic sort of gets lost in a way. So I thought it was a challenge because you thought, what was the idea here and how can I make that work? Which is a much different process than my usual process when it comes to directing. I know why it was written, I know the intention, I know what I wanted of it. So.
Did you find, testing the auteur theory, that you noticed like visual preoccupations of yours?
Well, you would have to, it takes an outside eye to, the part of the auteur theory is you need the Francois Truffaut or someone to be judging the common threads. What do you think? Do you think it seems like my work?
I feel thematically I can see things, and obviously you weren't responsible for that, but maybe that's what drew you to the...
Do you? Like what?
All of your films have this kind of classic Canadian protagonist that is like refusing responsibility or activity at all, and then this kind of like drawn into something where they have to take action.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's true. That is true. It is my kind of protagonist. It's a Canadian protagonist. Yeah.
I heard that it was a protagonist that Telefilm wanted to kill at one point. Like
they did have the campaign at one point to kill the Canadian protagonist, despite the fact it's an honorable tradition, really, in not just Canadian films, but
Hamlet.
You know, I mean, that's sort of authorial protagonist. The contemplative protagonist, or the protagonist that is reluctant to act, or the observing protagonist is huge. You know, like this, we can think of a million plays and books and novels that have protagonists like that, and movies too, I suppose. But I would have to think of some great ones. I'm sure you have some.
With that,
but I mean, certainly it's a valid form of storytelling. So I think it's ridiculous to try and kill it, and it is. I like thinking protagonists. I agree. Yeah.
It's interesting as well that you refer to this as a film that's like, it has its beats that you have to hit. I mean, it does seem at one level to be the classic comedy.
I like that too. I really liked. I mean, I like puzzles. I do the cryptic crossword puzzle every day in the Globe and Mail. I haven't finished this one yet because I had a busy morning. I always finish them, as a matter of fact. There's maybe once or twice in well, it's true. I almost finished. Sounds like I'm bragging, but it's true. I like puzzling, and comedy is a bit of a puzzle. You know, it really is a mechanical thing. And during Michael Tuesdays and Thursdays, I really felt it was fun to say, "Oh no, I think if we can get a laugh here." It's not just a laugh; it's the pleasure of the mechanics of comedy. Do you know what I mean? There's it is something I found that I had pleasure in. You know, writing the little musical I wrote, The Dresden Chaperone, it's sort of a tribute. What I was sort of inspired, what we were all inspired by, were old comedies, like from the 20s, like Marx Brothers movies or Ernst Lubitsch movies and things like, mostly movies, of course, because we hadn't seen plays from the 20s, but we were writing about movies that accurately reflect stage shows at the time. Like the early Marx Brothers films are almost direct translations of their stage shows, and in fact it's basically proscenium musicals.
Yep.
So that kind of thing appeals to me, and I like, or in Twitch City, I always cited the example of Three's Company, which I think of as like a classic French farce. You know, it's like a formula and variations, and there's a certain kind of wit to seeing that simple formula manipulated in different ways, and the little surprises and joys you can get out of that. It's like commedia dell'arte or something like that. So I feel that kind of comedy, the Grand Seduction script was like an Ealing's comedy when I read it. I said, this kind of comedy, I always thought of Whiskey Galore, or, you know, it's like a community comedy. It's about charm, kind of.
Yeah.
Charming satisfaction of a well-made thing.
It's also Canadian, though, too. I mean, I was thinking of Stephen Leacock or something like
yes,
the tradition of
there
Canadian small town.
is true. That is true, too. There is a Canadian tradition of rural comedy, in particular, I guess you're referring to.
Yeah. And what is the role in Canada in this? I mean, it's pretty
What
obvious.
is Canada's role in it?
Yeah, you've got at the very least, you've got our
I feel like
currency.
this bottle is just too, like, maybe I need a glass with this one, because I think it's going to look really bad on camera.
No, that's cool.
It will look like I'm a wino, you know?
That's the premise of our series.
It's not even gonna stay, see? I don't know, don't you think?
It's good.
You refuse this. I can use this maybe if you dump.
Absolutely.
Why don't you dump the water and, sorry, what was the role of?
Well, Canada in this one. I mean, you've got a film that's set in Quebec, you're moving it to the East Coast, it's pretty Canadian.
I got a guy, I always thought Taylor's character comes from Vancouver or something, so it's a sort of cross Canada. Well, no, it's a product placement, but that's okay.
They are product placement.
They are product placements?
Yeah.
Oh. It is Canadian, you know. I mean, the whole Newfoundland, even in terms of Canadian history, I feel this story in Newfoundland is very much, I always thought, like Joey Smallwood's story of trying to attract improbable factories to the middle of nowhere, you know. There's something, the kind of entrepreneurship in it is a specifically Canadian kind of crazy business proposal thing. That's, I feel, very Canadian. It's like the bringing business in the middle of the wilderness, like taming the wilderness with a bit, making it inhabitable by humans.
Yeah.
There's something fundamentally Canadian about that. And so I think, I mean, it's very Newfoundland, but it is very Canadian, I think. And it's also, particularly it's Canadian because it's social. It's about community.
Yeah.
I think that's especially rare in American comedies nowadays. And that's one of the things that drew me to it. It's about a community. It's not really about an individual bucking the odds. It's about an entire community.
Deceiving.
Well, yes. Just like the whole Canadian project's maybe a big deception, perhaps, where we tell everyone that you know, we're this multicultural, there's a deceptive element, but it is also about gathering together and telling a story together, you know, coming up with a common story and a way to present ourselves in order to sell. I feel that that's something very Canadian about that project.
Well, there's also
it's only going to work if everyone is in on it.
Yeah. And the irony is that, like, there's like this beautification process for a place that is in itself so beautiful
Incredibly
already.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's one of the things too that I liked about it. There's a certain irony to the whole thing. It's actually an incredibly beautiful place. Everyone in our crew that arrived said, well, I could live here. Almost immediately, it's like, I love these people. I would love to live here. But there's a certain insecurity in the village, right? They have to paint. In fact, they're painting away the beautiful patina on the weathered old harbor that people would adore, photographers would adore, right? Which is something they do too. They're always beautifying out there. They were trying to make it look better, these beautiful, beautiful vistas.
Did you find that you had to like pull back so that it didn't seem like it was an advertisement for like the tourist board of Newfoundland?
I don't mind if it's an advertisement for the tourist.
How did you visually interact with the landscape?
Well, it was interesting. Like, it was hard because there was an amazing vista at every corner, and I wanted to, not the corners, there are no corners out there. It's all rocky. And it was hard to, at first it was actually hard to give a sense of specificity to the village because I wanted there to be a feeling of logic and geography to the place. But to do that, I actually had to use several different villages because none of them actually played out. And I also wanted it to feel like an outport with no roads, and that's hard too now.
Were there any, or is it like an amalgam of different?
It's an amalgam of different areas. Some of them have new roads and things like that. But of course, you can imagine that's not beloved by the production office. It's not a great thought. They're not all over that. I don't know, the landscape was fun. That was really fun for me. It's fun, and I tried as much as possible to exploit it because that was the big expense of this film. We were out there. The biggest expense was getting a crew out there and getting all the equipment out. So I worked hard to save time for a landscape shot. And I almost wish I had more, but some of that, my favorite things, I'm almost where I just waited for a nice shot of character in a landscape or something.
I like the early section and how it kind of made me think of those Canada Post heritage moment things, like the not flashback, but I guess like the
early
dream.
Yeah.
How did you approach just? I'm thinking even the colors. It's an interesting.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was initially going to make that more clearly satiric. That was my initial intention. Just to make it a little overly sentimental and to make the audience a little concerned about what kind of movie it was going to be. And I wanted to make the father character really macho, kind of like. I actually approached Russell Crowe to play the part.
To Republic of Doyle?
Yeah, exactly. I said, why don't you come out, you love Newfoundland, come out and play the part, it'd be really funny. And like, I wanted to have Hans Zimmer type music as they marched down the hill. But it didn't, but strangely, first of all, the weather was so calm and serene, and it was so beautiful that I couldn't do it. I was sucked in by genuine sentiment. When we had the shot of the men marching down the hill like fishermen, it was so moving for all those people are villagers, they're all fishermen who are unemployed, and they were in tears. They were so moved by that moment. It was so moving on the set that I thought, I can't make a joke of this. I can't. I decided instead to make it this sort of dream, like beautiful dream that starts it off. But it is a bit of a trick beginning still because it's almost too much.
Yeah, I think that's what the colors suggested to me. Like that's that like kind of gentle ribbing of the sentimentality, but
just slightly teasing. But the children are so beautiful. It's also beautiful that it's not that funny, which is fine. It would be hard to make it funny too, and sort of cruel. And it's not the point. The point is that they do long for the past, and there is truth to that desire.
What does that say about contemporary Canada? I mean, it's a film that's not like politically overt, but obviously there is an actual contextual political situation, which is the COD moratorium.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really complicated, and I'm not unaware of the ironies of the. I mean, I made it an oil company. Actually, it was one of my additions to make it an oil company and make it because that's what the only real possible industry out there in Newfoundland is oil, and there is oil. It's saving the province basically. But and I made it this complicated petrochemical byproduct repurposing plant, which is something that I made up. But
it's very Canadian, actually.
It's sort of the ideas is some sort of bureaucratic attempt by public relations attempt by the oil company to seem like they're doing something good by the fact that they're exploiting this landscape. And I added the stuff where Murray's ambivalent about it. I added all the stuff where he says, I don't want to work for these guys, but what else am I going to do? Because a couple of times towards the end we were thinking, what are we saying? They're saved by this oil company that's going to rape the resources and destroy all the natural beauty and turn this beautiful harbor into a suburb of, but I guess the idea of people being empowered is nevertheless, of taking control over the fate is nevertheless has some value to me. And this idea, the fishing industry was obviously badly managed, and it was that industry, as romantic as it is, also was badly managed and is not sustainable anymore. So I don't think that people can. I agree with the moratorium, and so does most of the people I agree out there agreed to a degree. But they all think that the problem is the fishing industries, and that their way was sustainable, and that may be true too. But anyway, so it's really complex, I think. But and part of the thing that intrigued me was this idea of the question of what people do to survive, or what they have to do to survive, and to sustain something like their traditional lifestyle. Because right now, because of these new welfare reforms, those villages are all going to collapse, the villages that I was shooting in, because they're mandated by this new Harper legislation to travel a couple of hours. If there's a job available an hour away in Clarenville, then at the McDonald's, and it's available, then they have to go there, and they can't accept welfare checks. So I guess I shouldn't use the word welfare, which is American.
Yeah.
I should say you are.
Are you looking to maybe push this into American audiences?
Oh, sure. Anyway, it's complicated, just like the fishing is, and just like everything in Newfoundland has always been.
How did you resolve that? You obviously are talking about attention to
I didn't resolve it. I sort of drew attention to it.
Yeah.
And I was hoping people would think at the end, that big factory that they added at the end, it's not so beautiful.
It's bigger than every other structure
combined.
Yeah,
exactly. Completely dominates the town. And now they've got I had cars running through it and all that.
Some of the things you were just saying seemed like they were the Leanne Balban character was saying them.
It is. I sort of added all that Leanne Balban stuff. I sort of added her as more of. I emphasized her resistance to the project.
Like a Greek chorus, maybe, or maybe the perspective that the audience should be having.
Kind of. It is. She is the sort of critical. She is the perspective of. This is the collective goal of attracting this factory, and it's a necessity, of course. They need it, and she represents sort of a critical voice.
Let's go to Childstar.
Okay.
Is that
all clear now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All my questions have been dissipating.
Childstar. I hope I can remember that. Are you editing this by any chance? Or are you going to play it like that gondola film?
Yeah. Just every shot.
10-minute takes.
We have one cam that's just a close-up on your face.
I'm in trouble.
I love Childstar so much.
And
it seems like it's disappeared from the conversation about. Well, there isn't a conversation about Canadian cinema.
No, I wish there was. So, this is it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But it seems like it's only increased in its, I think, value.
Oh, you think so?
In Canadian history.
Well, one thing amused me is that on the plane back from Brazil, where I was a couple of weeks ago, I saw. I can't even remember the name of it. Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah.
Which is exactly
First Son.
The First Son movie. It's and there was another one too. And there's White House Down.
First Daughter came out.
There was First Daughter came out, and there was another one too that came out about
Air Force One.
No, that was prior.
Anyway,
but what I honestly thought of it as a ludicrous the most ludicrous premise for an American film, and there they are.
But that's what's so great about it. And I think that what's happened since then is that there are certain aspects of the film visually that are so rooted in the aesthetic of late 90s, early 2000s films that creates like another kind of frame that's happening in
when you're looking at it now,
yeah,
you mean?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like that type of Childstar is it's like almost like it's reflecting that historical moment, like of like boy band era.
That's interesting, yeah.
I mean, it's Haley Joel Osment,
yeah,
but like
sort of Haley Joel Osment kind of.
And you were going to cast Rory Culkin potentially in it.
I talked about that. Who did you hear that from?
You. I read it somewhere.
What? I had thought of that, and there's a couple of people I thought of. But I was very happy with Mark, yeah.
It is interesting, though, that if you actually had a Childstar that had a kind of star quality beyond that, that would...
What it would have done,
yeah.
I talked actually to Corey Haim, too, and I actually met with him. And he was very eager to do it, but I wasn't confident he could, well, our insurers wouldn't allow him to be cast, but anyway.
But yeah, let's talk about the frame. It's a good frame. It's got so many frames.
Yeah,
but
it's full of frames.
Yeah, and I love the film itself. The first time, like what you're doing, like the gymnastics you're doing as a filmmaker. Like you have to do more as a filmmaker for this dumb, like film within the film than maybe potentially the actual film itself.
It was the biggest expense, that's for sure.
Like some of those shots, like in the what is it, the fighter jet or something. When you're making this, is that feeding into it? Like how ridiculous it is to be going to those lengths
to even shoot that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was trying to make that pretty clear by actually showing that rig, the giant rig in a giant studio for this close-up. It's a close-up, which I thought was pretty funny.
You've got that film within the film. You've got the film you're making as Don McKellar, and then you've got the 8mm films in it. Is there like an alternate?
Is there a further level?
No, I was gonna say, are you making 8mm?
I think this is the further level right here now. It's the context of the film being screened within this.
It's happening.
This is
3, 4,
that's it.
5.
It's like a infinite regression back to.
It's our homage.
What is going on up there? It is true.
But there's also like the genre hopping that I love about it. I mean, like I think that to me is a Canadian quality, like a postmodernism that has a humor attached to it.
I do think that Toronto whatever wave of Canadian film, whatever you want to call that, if there was, which I think is something I felt at the time, that things were happening and things were doing things. Me and Adam and Bruce and not even me necessarily yet, but Adam and Bruce and Peter Medler and Patricia. It is a postmodern aesthetic. It came out of a period where that was what we thought, that postmodernism as a tool is something that we were reading about and thinking about, and I think that that's what it reflects a lot. And if you want to know my answer about Adam's new film, I feel that it's missing. I still prefer Adam's films when they're completely were his, when it's his storytelling, and they have that level of artifice and complexity. That's to me what I would say, and I feel that his new film, Devil's Knot, doesn't have that quite as much. I look for it and I almost feel it at moments, but I don't quite.
What about your new film? I mean, it's different.
I shouldn't have said that, but I'm just trying to.
It's different.
What I'm saying is, I love Adam being Adam, and I always want him to do his thing more. But what about my? So that's what I came out to. I mean, that's what it comes out of my history and where I started. Where I went to this school at U of T, and the things that I was reading at the time. It was, this was the age of theory and literary theory, and definitely these ideas of sort of pastiche and juxtaposition, collage and things were very current at the time, and I was doing theater like that, and it slowly started evolving. Well, I mean, right from the beginning, in a way, it started happening in my film, because I think in the stuff I was writing, I even think in Roadkill and High 62 when there's elements of genre parody and stuff like that, and I like that stuff, and sort of twists on film expectations and things like that. And I feel that, but certainly by the time I was consciously inserting that kind of thing with 32 short films, book and Gould and things like that, and doing multiple perspective kind of, and I think Childstar is a film where I sort of tried to incorporate that in my work, but it's sort of more Frank Tashlin-like kind of unsettled genre, you know, like
at the end, especially.
Yeah. That's sort of what I was thinking. I like that kind of film. It's a kind of weird and maybe particular affection of mine that doesn't translate to the general public, but
you think that is that because of how it performed at the time, or?
Oh, I suppose. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can only think the way I think. I feel that I think I don't have. I've always had this sort of an episodic mind or collage like mine. That's why television appealed to me. I don't necessarily enjoy giant sustained arcs. I always find something suspect about that kind of bombastic drive that I find in obviously a lot of big American Hollywood films. I just find them like I'm not persuaded. I sort of always sort of lose my belief in the film around 3/4 of the way through. It happens all the time to me. It's like, oh, I really like this. It's fun. This is fun. It's sort of, I don't know. Like I feel that all the time. So that's sort of that was reflecting, I think, that sort of ambivalence.
Do you find that television is now turning into that?
Well, I mean, that's what I like about television. That's why I did Twitch City, particularly why I wanted to do television before it was fashionable. With Twitch City, and definitely Twitch City is all about that, and definitely television is like that. But then you could say, if you don't like those bombastic narratives, television's all about that now. Giant.
Yeah, I was going to say they've gotten longer and longer.
The funny thing is, and I'll use the word ironic again. Thing about television is that it's now lost its episodic appeal. Television used to have at least some strategies for different kind of narratives and more fragmented narratives, and now it seems like everyone wants
serialization.
Victorian novels, big old-fashioned serials, which some of them are fantastic, but I think there's more potential for television in that.
Would you do like a small town narrative, kind of like Grand Seduction, but on television? Because those old shows used to always be small towns. Like you would go to every time you tuned in, you'd be in that small town.
Mayberry kind of. That would be interesting. Yeah.
You're heading back to TV this fall, aren't you?
I'm doing a series shooting next month, which is, it's a mixture between episodic and we'll see.
How does that strike you from a writer's point of view, the possibilities there? Are you excited by that?
Oh yeah, totally. I always loved the potential of television. I think it's really interesting.
But you're back making films too.
Yeah, I mean, I like them both. I mean, I never have any sustained aim in my career. I always try something and and then try something else. I mean, I just think I pursue, if I'm interested in something at the time, I sort of go for it generally. And that's the way it is. I've had success with that. I feel like with the musical, I never would have ever imagined I'd be writing a Broadway musical. And then I just sort of did that. People liked it. And it's like, yeah, this is amazing. And then I won a Tony, And with a lot of things that I've done, I thought, I'm interested in this. And it sort of pays off. So I don't have any big career arc.
How involved are you in the movie adaptation of Jersey Chaperone?
Well, totally. Yeah. I mean, Bob and I wrote it, and it's really fun. And it's totally a genre, self-reflective genre, by far the most extremely postmodern thing you can imagine. So we'll see how that works.
But you're not directing it?
No.
No
right
question mark.
No. This Bose Lugtread beer is great. Really hits the spot.
This is a 90s self-reflexive. But, I mean, we weren't going to talk about last night, but I think it would be interesting to just briefly reflect on the fact that it's turning 15 next month.
That's amazing. It was very depressing when you guys approached me about this 15 years. I had a bit of a breakdown.
You must have noticed that
No.
all of these films are coming out now.
Yes.
That are in
I
the
have
exact
started.
same mold.
I'm not. It's been in press. People have said I've started this mini genre.
Yeah.
I do feel that the film I made has many offspring.
Have you seen any of them?
I saw Melancholia, which I do believe was ripped off my film because I know that he saw my film that year in Cannes and liked it, and I did very well in Denmark. My film. I didn't see a friend looking for a friend at the end of the world, which is. It was funny because I remember she tweeted something. Oh, people keep mentioning this Don McKellar's film last night. Don't mention it when I go to. She said, warning to Toronto Press, don't mention it. I haven't seen it, and I was like, really? That's what my lawyers told me to say when I. And anyway, like that's what else are they going to tell her to say?
Yeah.
I did rip off a little bit. So, but it's funny because I know friends of hers who really like that film. And all that I know is when I went to Newfoundland, I said, what, tell me all the great Newfoundland films, let's see them. But she didn't think of that when she was doing her End of the World. She didn't ask anyone that when she was doing her End of the World movie. No, I mean, there's some. I don't care. I think it's great. It's fantastic, actually. It's really, I just saw Edgar Wright's film, which he thanks me for, so I know that he's always been a big fan. And I think it's great. At World's End.
Yeah.
And no, I think it's great. I mean, I don't really, honestly, I don't. I'm making it sound like I begrudge these films. I don't at all. I think it's fantastic because I'm really interested in that. I've always, and obviously my film was inspired by earlier films or ideas about the end of the world.
Anything in particular?
For me, I always. It doesn't reflect it in the film, but I always like movies like Omega Man, and it's not the same kind of story, but
I Am Legend.
Yeah, I Am Legend. Those aren't the same kind of thing, but I always loved end of the world movies. And Armageddon was before. What is that the one? Was that the one before me or Independence Day? Independence Day.
Yeah, I think
is that the one? Well, that's not really end of the world movie, but. When I saw Independence Day, that influenced me. That idea that it's not really an end of the world. The world doesn't end, does it? No, of course not.
But they think it will.
They think it's going to. They're threatened.
Yeah.
And I mean, that affected both movies. This idea, because I think it was that one where Deep Impact 2 was one.
They both came out that same summer.
Where I remember one of them. They said in the news France was destroyed or something. I said, oh, that's a real shame. I just remember thinking, and one of them I remember Western Canada was blown away and you didn't even have a shot or something. It's like, well, I got relatives out there. That's really not a good thing. But you never even saw it. You never even heard anything about the trillions of people that died in these events, and then they're all cheering at the end. And you think, this is by far the worst day humanity has ever endured, and now they're all cheering at the end. It's like, and particularly the idea that they always focus on presidents and generals and astronauts,
or the dog that makes it,
or the dog of one of them, and their kids.
Yeah.
And one of them has kids or something like that. Who's a computer whiz. I don't know what it is, but that was the kind of thing that really influenced me was around, and Childstar too. The idea those aren't the responses that are human. If you're a president, you have a very specific set of responses to actions, and that's not what I would do or my friends would do. And I always thought, well, what would I do if I found? How would my reaction be if half the world was destroyed and it was saved by an astronaut? Well, it would still be a really bad day for me. You know what I mean? So And I would feel helpless and distraught. And I would be thinking about my mortality and my loved ones. So that's what I thought. That would be the vast majority of the world, except for 5 people, would be thinking that way. So that's sort of so in other words, all that I'm saying is that film was directly inspired by previous films. So if my film inspired people, that's good.
It has another legacy, which is that it's on the cover of the book about Toronto and cinema.
Oh,
I saw you do a panel a few months ago.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
How does that feel like to know that now you're being canonized insofar as you use that film?
We weren't supposed to talk about last night.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Toronto now, Toronto films.
I did think of the film as being Toronto,
Yeah.
in particularly, because, I was commissioned to do this film representing Canada, and they chose me instead of someone from Montreal or Guy Madden or something. So I said I should represent particularly my world, and so I thought I wanted to do a really Toronto film, and so I do think of it as a sort of a Toronto-like response. But no more on that.
Well, how does that relate to This Movie Is Broken?
Well,
You're writing a Toronto film there.
Well,
too.
that it's very similar. I mean, it's a similar kind of feeling of a moment in Toronto, or
But there's no history. That's interesting. It's always a moment, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no like.
I'm always trying to find a moment. Am I? No, that's what I think. I think filmmakers are always just trying to find an enduring moment. It might require history to illuminate that moment, but.
Is there a moment in Grand Seduction that really speaks to you? Like,
it's funny. I was just thinking when I did that little moment of fake self-reflection. I was wondering if there was something in Grand Seduction. I mean, what the Grand Seduction is building to is a moment of truth, and I think that's, in a nutshell, what any filmmaker is trying to do, is find a moment of illuminated truth that emerges. Certainly, that's what I was really trying to do with last night, is get to the moment at the end, basically, where it's like, okay, I say that, my character basically says that, we have to get to that spot, so I think that's what all the films are sort of about. Sometimes they fail, and they end in disillusionment, which I think is sort of what happens in Highway 61 or something, but they're aspiring to that,
that Faulknerian.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think of something in Grand Seduction, like a moment of truth for me as a viewer.
Well, I mean, I think just literally at the end, they tell the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It builds to a point where, as a community, they say, we have to tell the truth.
But there's something about that hug.
Well, that's the moment.
Yeah, but the hug seems like it's still half truth, half lie.
Really?
Because it's like he's hugging him because he bailed them out. But you're like, he's not hugging him as the father figure that he was pretending to be, but could be.
I really love that, because it feels like really the way my father is.
Yeah?
Yeah. See, that's a Canadian father to me. It's like, I love you, kid.
It's like a sideways hug.
It's like, my father's never going to be, hey, I love my father, but you know what I mean? It is a sideways kind of.
Yeah. Was that film influenced any further by your own autobiography, or?
I suppose everything is. I suppose it's the Auteur thing.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have done your homework and
all your sexual and psychological preoccupations are supposed to be.
So your premature ejaculation problem obviously influenced your.
I think we should end on the premature ejaculation joke.
Joke? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Don.
All right, thank you. There.
That was fun.
Are you going to edit it?
No. You'll have to get some legal advice.
I'm going to have to get legal advice.